You learned to be strong too early, when you still needed to be held. You swallowed your tears and called it maturity. You fix things, you carry everything, you endure, and everyone admires that. But no one asks how you really are. No one notices when you disappear inside. At night, the silence gets heavy. The house is quiet, your phone is too, and you feel something you can't explain. You don't feel weak, you feel alone, even surrounded by people. Even being so strong, there is a pain no one sees, because the heart knows its own bitterness. Not all loneliness is the absence of people. Sometimes it's the absence of rest. And what if this strength isn't a virtue, but an old armor? What if God never meant for you to carry everything alone? Then why does being strong hurt so much? You weren't born this way. You built yourself this way, little by little, in silence, learning not to ask, learning not to need, learning not to burden anyone, learning to be strong. At some point in life, being sensitive hurt too much. Being fragile wasn't safe, so you adapted. You did what you had to do to survive. Strength became shelter. Control became protection. Independence became identity, even at a high cost. Carl Jung would call this a persona, a necessary mask, not fake, functional. It protected you when no one else could. It helped you move forward. It kept you alive, and that matters. The problem isn't strength. It's the price of living only through it. While the world sees competence, the soul feels distance. While you solve everything outside, something is neglected inside. A sensitive part, a tired part. You are not wrong, not broken, not overreacting. There is logic in this. The psyche seeks safety, and when it doesn't find care, it builds armor. Even if it tightens, the more you identify with the strong woman, the more you hide the woman who feels. And what is repressed doesn't disappear. It waits, it accumulates, it asks for space, and when it finds no voice, it becomes loneliness. That's why you feel this way. It's not lack of love, not ingratitude, not drama. It's inner conflict between who you had to be and who you still are. And that hurts. You don't feel lonely because you're weak. You feel lonely because you're human, because you need connection, emotional rest, to be seen without performing, without strength, without a role, just presence. Understanding this brings relief because it removes the guilt. You didn't fail. You protected yourself, and now your soul is asking for something else. Not survival anymore, but integration. And that changes everything. Nothing started now. This strength has a story, a root, a reason. And when you understand that, pain stops being confusion and becomes a message, a necessary pause. Without realizing it, you repeat, not the same people, but the same emotional place. You become the strong one, the one who understands, the one who holds everything, the one who doesn't demand, the one who waits. You often connect with those who need support, those who are confused, unavailable, wounded. That way, you have a role. You feel useful. You feel in control. But you don't receive reciprocity. You give too much, because giving makes you necessary, and being necessary makes you feel safe. As long as they need you, they won't leave. That logic started early, and it repeats in love, always disguised as maturity. You choose those who can't stay, because unconsciously, it confirms something old, that loving means waiting. That connection requires effort. That rest is dangerous. That depending hurts, so you avoid it. You call it independence, but deep down, it's protection. You anticipate rejection. You don't ask. You don't demand. You don't fully surrender. And then you wonder why you feel alone. The pattern doesn't scream. It whispers. It says, be strong. Don't need. Don't burden. Don't trust too much. So you adapt. Again. Here you realize something hard. This loneliness isn't bad luck, not punishment, not lack of worth. It's loyalty to what once kept you alive, even when it no longer serves you, even when it hurts, even when it exhausts you. The psyche repeats what is familiar, not what is healthy. Familiar feels safe, even when it wounds. That's why you return to the same dynamics, not out of weakness, but unconscious loyalty to an older version of you. And when the other doesn't stay, you confirm the story. I can handle this alone. I always stay. I can't need anyone. But every confirmation costs something. A bit of hope, a bit of yourself. This is where it hurts. but it also brings clarity, because a pattern only survives while it remains invisible. Once you see it, it loses power, and something in you awakens, in silence. If you see yourself in these words, it means your soul has already begun to awaken. This channel exists for strong women who are tired of surviving alone and are ready to understand themselves, heal, and rebuild with purpose. Here, you won't hear empty advice, but truths that free you and faith applied to real life. Subscribe now, not out of habit, but as a commitment to the part of you that longs for rest. You don't have to walk this journey alone. Being strong is exhausting, but you don't allow yourself to stop. You keep functioning, even empty, even tired, even without comfort. You keep going, and that has a cost. Little by little, you abandon yourself, not out of neglect, but out of habit. You take care of everyone. You solve everything. You listen to everyone, but you ignore your own limits, and the soul feels it. The emptiness grows in silence. It's not despair, it's numbness, a lack of enthusiasm, living on autopilot, smiling when you can, enduring when you can't, and calling it normal. You begin to feel displaced, as if you don't belong anywhere. Not with people, not in relationships, not even with yourself. You're present, but not whole, and that hurts. Loneliness becomes identity. I've always been like this. I handle things. I don't need anyone. These phrases support you, but they also isolate you, because no one enters where they're not invited, not even God. So you try the false solution, loving more, giving more, enduring more. Maybe then someone will stay. Maybe then you'll be chosen. But this doesn't heal. It only deepens the exhaustion. You try to please, to be understanding, to be easy, to mature. But love doesn't grow from constant sacrifice. It grows from meeting, and you're always alone in the middle of it. Again, when that fails, you think about closing off, not feeling, not engaging. But isolation doesn't protect, it numbs, and a numbed soul doesn't live, it only survives. None of this works, not loving too much, not shutting down, not being perfect, because the problem isn't how much you give, it's how much you exclude yourself, and that needs to change, gently. This is where pain becomes awareness. You see the cost and understand something essential. Strength without care becomes a prison, and emotional freedom begins when you stop abandoning yourself, even if it's scary, even if it's new. Healing doesn't start by changing others. It starts by changing how you treat yourself. And that's uncomfortable, because you learned to forget yourself. The first action is simple, but deep. Stop anticipating everyone else and start listening to yourself. When something tires you, you usually ignore it. When something hurts, you rationalize it. Now, do it differently. Name what you feel, without explaining, without justifying. This creates inner presence, and presence creates safety. The soul relaxes when it's heard. You don't need to fix everything. You need to feel first, because repressed emotion becomes invisible weight. The second action is learning to ask, not for everything, not all the time, but for something real. Ask for help, ask for time, ask for clarity, ask for care. Asking is not weakness, it's emotional maturity. Jung would say, it's integrating the shadow, acknowledging limits, and allowing connection, because relationship only exists where there is exchange. Start small. One honest conversation, one calm boundary, one "I can't today." You don't lose value because of this. You gain truth, and truth draws closer those who can stay. Some people will feel uncomfortable, others will walk away. That hurts, but it also reveals. Anyone who only connected with your strength never knew how to love your humanity. Little by little, something shifts. You're no longer betraying yourself. You hold yourself from within, and that lowers anxiety. Loneliness begins to soften, not because someone arrived, but because you returned to yourself. Healing isn't becoming someone else. It's stopping the escape from who you are. The strong woman remains, but now accompanied by sensitivity, by boundaries, by truth. And that is new. You don't need to do everything today. Just take the first step, the hardest one, the simplest one. Listen to yourself and respect yourself. The rest will organize itself with time. Up to this point, you understood the pain. You understood the pattern. You understood the cost. Now something shifts. Because God doesn't enter as an explanation. He enters as presence, silent, faithful. There is a kind of loneliness that only God recognizes, the one no one sees, the one you hide behind strength. Scripture says, each heart knows its own bitterness. God doesn't minimize that. He validates it. You are not alone because you failed, not because you're hard to love, not because you asked for too much. You are alone because you learned to survive without support, without comfort, without rest. And God saw everything, every silent night, every time you swallowed your tears, every time you were strong out of obligation. He didn't walk away, he drew closer, even when you didn't notice, even when you didn't feel it. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted, not the weak, the brokenhearted, those tired of performing strength, those who keep functioning but are cracked inside. That's where he enters, without demanding performance. Maybe you learned that God only comes close when you're doing well, stable, confident. But that's an illusion. He reveals himself when you stop hiding. Your strength never pushed God away. What pushed him away was the armor. Armor protects, but it also isolates. God doesn't invade, he waits for permission. And permission is born in vulnerability. So loneliness changes meaning. It stops being punishment and becomes invitation. An invitation to encounter. With him, with yourself, with the part you left behind trying to be too strong. You don't need to break to be loved. You just need to stop pretending it doesn't hurt. God doesn't want to take your strength. He wants to give you rest, because strength carried alone exhausts. But shared strength becomes peace, and that is redemption. Silent. Maybe this is mature faith, not the one that fixes everything, but the one that stays when no one else does. God isn't asking for more effort. He's asking for surrender. And surrender isn't giving up. It's stopping the fight alone. You are still strong, but now you understand what that means. It's not carrying everything. It's knowing when to let go. It's not enduring alone. It's allowing companionship. It's not hardening. It's integrating. Loneliness doesn't disappear suddenly. It transforms, loses its weight, loses its guilt. It becomes space, a space for encounter with yourself, with God. You no longer need to prove anything, or earn love, or justify your feelings. You learn to stay with yourself, without rush, without performance, without armor. The strong woman doesn't die here. She matures. Now she knows how to ask, how to pause, how to rest. She remains steady, but not rigid, present. You understand something essential. It wasn't rejection, it was redirection. It wasn't loss, it was liberation. It wasn't weakness, it was awareness. God didn't take people away from you. He removed you from places where you had to shrink to belong, where you had to be strong to be loved. That wasn't love, it was survival. Now silence doesn't scare you, it holds you, because you are no longer empty. You are whole, whole in God, whole in yourself, whole in truth, and that brings peace. You can't change the past, but you can change its meaning. Pain becomes a teacher, loneliness becomes a guide, strength becomes an ally, and faith becomes ground. Nothing was wasted, nothing. The cycle closes here. The question changes. It's no longer, why does this happen to me? Now it's, what did this teach me? And that answer leads you somewhere new, more conscious, more free. You are not late, not broken, not alone. You are awakening, and those who awaken never accept crumbs again. Not in love, not in faith. If this message touched something in you, it wasn't by chance. This channel exists for those who are tired of being strong alone and ready to live with more awareness, faith, and peace. Subscribe now and walk with us through this journey of deep, real healing. Here, you don't have to pretend strength. Here, you can rest. For you who made it to the end of this video, write in the comments, I choose not to fight alone. This simple act is a sign of surrender and awareness. Scripture says that when we know the truth, it sets us free. May this decision mark a new beginning. You are not alone.